I want to talk to you today about the problem most teachers, salesmen, business owners, most people in general have, in that they are unable to take things that are complex and break them down into something simple. Now, we like to imagine, it's a very common and well understood meme, that we like to imagine that to be smart, to know stuff, difficult things, they're complicated. And this is true, difficult things are complicated. But because they're complicated, doesn't mean that the way that we explain them, we communicate them, and the way that we organize them within our minds needs to be complicated as well. In fact, if you're organizing things in your head and communicating things in your head in a complicated way, it's usually a signal that you don't know it well enough. There's lots of really famous cliche quotes from people like Albert Einstein, Richard Feynman, where they say, you know, any intelligent fool can make something more complicated, more difficult, but it takes a genius to really make something more elegant and simple. And that's really what you're looking for. Some of the most sophisticated companies in the world are built upon very, very elegant and simple work. For example, Stripe, the payment processor, it's like only a small amount of code that really runs the whole thing, but the code is really well put together. It's not this big blather of spaghetti code or something like that. It's elegantly done and simply done but correctly done. This is a sort of defining trait of sophistication, simple but sophisticated. Now, the problem with teachers, salesmen, business owners, people in general with this type of stuff is that the reason why they make things complicated, it's almost like a level thing, is because they can't think properly. They don't have actually the mental faculties and some things like, for example, humility, in order to overcome the problems of being too complicated. At the very beginner level, you don't really understand that you're an idiot, and you need to explain everything in simpler terms because you don't comprehend it. And for this reason, you can't really dig deep into the nature of what the problem is, what the thing you're trying to do is. Maybe it's a science or quantum physics or blockchain or psychology or something like this. And then the sort of next level up above this is you become someone in the know. You get introduced into the cult by the cult leaders, by the teachers, by the professors, by the nogginists and jargonites, and they take you up and they teach you a little bit about how things work. They say, all right, you're a chosen one of us, you're one of us. They bring you into it, maybe, for example, with the product you build for a business or some type of thing you're trying to sell. And what happens is you bring it up and you understand what you have. You see, you know, like details about it. You get fed maybe jargon about what's going on. You go into the classroom and they shove down all the conceptions and jargon about how things work. You go to a psychology class, for example, and you get introduced to all these big fancy words by these very important people, you know, these fancy words like individuation, these fancy words like behavioral psychology, these fancy words like cognitive behavioral therapy, these fancy words like borderline personality disorder. You get gifted this roster of jargon, this roster of concepts, and this happens in every single industry, and you become an insider, and you can now look at the normie world who doesn't really understand these strange words, and you can actually sort of control them in some sense, because you can say, well, I'm an expert, I'm a knower, I'm someone in the know who has possession of these strange words, and I can actually impose them upon you. And when I label you as a strange word, maybe you've got borderline personality disorder, you're a narcissist, or some other weird thing that you've come up with because you've learned psychology, it's almost like you're putting a bubble on them, category on them, and defeating them and categorizing them as like, I'm the authority in this and you're wrong. I've labeled you as this wrong thing. You become part of that caste of people, that class of people, the experts, the Brahmins that rule life and understand how things work. Now, what's fascinating about this is that just because you've been gifted all this jargon, these sets of concepts, does not mean that you in any way understand what this jargon is. This is always the thing that I'm hammering on my channel. Like, my channel is like dumb in some sense, like how simple I make things, how silly I make things, how much I don't take things too seriously. And actually, that's actually very intentionally done from the very, very start, because when I was younger, I used to be an annoying student. I would never sit around and just have jargon hammered to me, and I would ask questions of the professors, and they'd often get very, very mad at me for this. I'd ask them to break down concepts into simpler explanations. I'd often ask them to reduce what they're trying to say and make it more straightforward and clear, and oftentimes they couldn't. Oftentimes that was a problem for them, and I would not say to myself I had learned something until I could break it down and explain it in my own words. That was like, you probably remember that from when you were in school. Explain things in your own words. That's actually really, really good advice, like top tier good advice, because in order for you to explain things in your own words, you have to do all sorts of very, very difficult things. You have to, first of all, grab what you're trying to explain and break it down, study it, reduce it and think about it in a way that makes it simple for you, and then represent it and communicate it in a way that's simple for someone else. These are unbelievably difficult things to do. Basically the whole channel that I do is built on the back of this type of thinking. I come in and I pick up Jung's jargon and Nietzsche's jargon, and I chew it up, I look through it, I try to understand it, and oftentimes it's very, very profound for me even to learn stuff. I chew it up and then I try to represent it in my own words, in as simple language as possible, as if I'm talking to people who aren't pretentious pretentious and haven't gone to that college stuff. In fact, I sort of actively disrespect that. And this actually really opens it up and makes it accessible for people. I think many of the people I like listening to, like Jordan Peterson and all that as well, they do this stuff too. And I can sit there and I can listen to people talk with all the technical language and I can hear it and all that stuff, but it doesn't, I know that that's not a signal of the apex. In fact, that's genuinely a signal of the middle. It's a midwit. It's the people who don't get it yet. They've been introduced into the Brahmin caste. They know the concepts. They're able to grab the concepts, but they don't grab the truth. They don't grab the ideas. They've grabbed the signposts, but not the actual destination. And so what I always like doing is seeing that and understanding that the level above this, the level that I would always encourage people to get to, is the next paradigm where you actually go from having respect and awe for concepts to wanting to destroy them and get beneath the concepts or see through the concepts and get to the actual root and the actual truth, which is the real experience that the concepts refer to de-jargonize things, to take words that are shoved upon you and represent them and explain them to yourself in a way that's crystal clear and down to earth and fully done this way. And this is a very difficult thing. As I said, Einstein, Richard Feynman, all these types of people explain things to me like I'm five, use them in your own words. These ways of thinking, these mental models are actually incredibly profound. This helps you learn better, helps you think better, and helps you talk better, which is all the skills that you want to have. And generally speaking, the vast majority of experts and professors and all these type of things, these people actually don't have these skills. It's complete fraudulent, and most of these industries are just conflated with fraudulent jargon with no actual substance underneath this, because there's not enough intelligent people to audit the midwits, and the midwits form this tyranny of midwittery and nogginism and jargonism that now rules over us all and crushes both the excellent, exceptional, individual, creative, imaginative types, the geniuses, and also the poor, low-wit people, the normies who do not know about this stuff as well. So this is one of my main focuses. This is something that I absolutely love doing and focus on so much. Now, what I want you to do is try and invoke this in your life the best way you possibly can. So I'm afraid to say that the Dionysian energy contained within this speech, it actually drew the childlike energy of the youth. They came dancing around me. I got distracted, so I had to kind of cut that take off there. Apologies. But what I'm going to end with is basically obviously shilling for the Boyo program, because this is a training regime that we do with every single person we come in. We get a lot of people in who have been miseducated by the conglomerate of midwits that we call the overarching institutions of this world, the education system and all this type of stuff. And they can't make clean decisions. They don't know how to use their head. They don't know how to use their psychology. They don't understand any of this stuff. And so we take them in. It's so simple to do it with them as well. Sit them down and just show them the basics that they've missed. It's like they've come in and they want to learn to fight. You know, they've gone through 20 years of like some weird, crappy fight school, and they come in and they don't even know how to, you know, throw punches properly. And you just take them in. You're like, oh my God, all right, here's how you do the simple things rightly. And that just changes the whole way that they approach everything. And this is what we're doing in the Boyo program. So if you're interested, you can book a call down below. And generally speaking, I actually talk to quite a lot of people about this concept, and I'd like to talk about it more on the channels, because I've noticed that I speak about it from maybe the education perspective and psychology, but I see it everywhere. People always bring it up to me. Like the cameraman literally just spoke to me now, and he said he used to work in pharmaceutical companies, and he was educated as a biochemist, and he would notice that they would all in the pharmaceutical companies would have these abbreviations that they would give down to him and tell him to repeat and all this type of stuff, and he would oftentimes ask them what these mean, and they were like, no, you're a salesman, you're not a scientist here. You're doing a very specific role. Don't ask these questions, because nobody really knew. They were just concepts that they were given and told that they're magic concepts that do a certain thing, and just to repeat them for certain ways. It's almost like we're imprisoned in a beehive of concepts, but no one has ever turned around and be like, wait, is any of this stuff even real? Like, what's going on? You can't just like punch your holes out and realize, oh my God, it's all just wax, it's all just bullshit or something like this. And I see it all the time in salesmen as well. I work with people, I've done this with loads of people, and you meet a salesman and he gets a product and he has to sell the product. Because what happens is he picks up all the buzzwords and he turns into like a buzzword salesman. So he's a guy sitting down and he's just like buzzword, 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 concept, jargon, thing, because he grabs the things and he says them, but they don't fit in the right context. They have no soul. They don't really kind of move you emotionally. There's no story wrapped up around them. It's a really important thing to get right. It's a thinking skill. The thinking skill that leads to an understanding, which then leads to your ability to communicate on the highest level possible, which is what I aspire to the most. Is probably the reason why you're listening to me. So as I said, if you want to learn this stuff, you can learn it with me. Thank you very much for your time. Stay juicy and bye-bye.